Yo, what's up, YouTube Nation? We got a new video today for all you new Ambershire homies and all the new Turtle WoW players in general. And so, you did it. You got to 60. Big 6-0. And right about now, you're seeing all this new content, and you're wondering, what do I do? What should I do? And you're probably just as confused as a small indie game company wondering where all their players are going. Well, lucky for you, if you didn't take enough Tylenol growing up to be autistically obsessed with a 20-year-old video game, I did. So I got a checklist for you guys to do on what to do in 60. And so we're going to jump right into that. But before that, I got to do the thing. Just hit that subscribe button. Helps a lot. We are pushing for 500, boys. The big 500. If we can get to that, I'll be super happy by the end of the year. And hit that notification bell. But let's jump into this and go over this checklist on what you should be doing at 60. All right. One of the first things we can probably take a look at is when you get maybe on your way to 60 or even at 60, you can probably start looking at raid attunements. That is going to be number one, the first thing you're going to want to do. And here are the two current raid attunements for Ambershire. So these first few are going to be pretty much givens that everybody who's played WoW long enough knows. You're going to want to head over to Morgan's Vigil of your Alliance and talk to this guy right here. He's going to start the Dragonkin Menace quest, which will lead you down a very long and annoying quest line as an alliance to unlock your Drakefire amulet, which will give you your Onyxia attunement. And that's going to be really big now that raids are unlocked on Ambershire. And then while you're at it, while you're running Blackrock Depths, part of that and during that quest chain for Onyxia, you can also talk to Lothos Riftwaker here and get attunement to the core. And while you're doing Molten Core runs, eventually you'll end up in it by the entrance of Molten Core, which is found inside Blackrock Depths, stupidly enough. You can just hit the core on the outside right there, and then that'll get you attuned. It's pretty easy, and I recommend just doing that really quickly. For Horde, our Oni attunement is one short boat ride away over here in Kargath. And we just talked to Warlord Goretooth, and he starts our very long and arguably even more tedious in the Alliance Onyxia attunement quest chain, because we have to talk to Rexar and travel across the world and kill a bunch of dragons. But other than that, you can also do this while you're leveling as well. You can even ding 60 doing this quest and just speeds it up. And while you're at it, just same thing as the Alliance, just grab your Molten Core attunement while you're at it. So those are two things you can do right when you get to 60. Or you can even do it on your way to 60 to be more efficient. And that's just unlocking your two raid attunements. But before you do that, you might even want to start considering what gearing process you're going to do and what spec you're going to play. And there's a couple options you can have for gearing that Turtle WoW has added just to make it a little bit simpler. And we'll touch on that here in the next segment. All right, so the next thing you want to do when you get to 60 is you want to start planning to get into the raids you just unlocked. So we're going to start looking at getting gear. And we are going to go over a couple of the options here we have. We have plenty. You're going to want to do a mix of each one of these. The first one we're going to look at is reputation and the new reputation rewards added to some of the factions here. One of the first factions I want to cover are the changes that were made to the Shendralar. And the easiest way to get here is through Dire Maw North and just go to the library. If you don't have the key, get a friend to unlock it for you. And just come through this tunnel and make our way towards the library. Once we get to the library, we can come over here and talk to this NPC over here. He's newly added. He's the Shendralar Provisioner, and he'll have a couple of items. I don't have the reputation for it right now, but I can still show it to you guys here. You get items such as these recipes here. You can either pick these up or just grab the mats and have somebody that has them make them for you. Makes it a lot easier to get some pre-bis items here. They're very powerful, a lot of these, especially once you start getting into Revered and Exalted. It also has one of my, I want to touch base, one of the Frost Mages, probably their best elixir that they can get is this one right here, the Frost Spell damage. And so let's move on to the next faction that I want to touch on, which would be the Wildhammer Dwarves. As I mentioned a second ago, the Wildhammer Dwarves got a huge update to how their reputation works. They have a ton more items now. And they are available from the same Wildhammer Quartermaster. I don't have the reputation because I'm not a sociopath who saved every tribal necklace I got and turned them in. But if you are, and you got a bunch where you're leveling up, or you have infinite money to buy them, you can have awesome items such as these. which are some of these are really powerful. Some of these recipes are very good. Which again, like I said, some of these reputations are just alternate paths to getting some pre-bis items. And yeah, so this one has this one has one of my favorite pieces, which is this hammer here. And that's pretty sick. It's very good for Fury Warriors and just Paladins in general. Unfortunately, Horde can't get something like this, so Shamans are out of the question. But there's still the Argent Dawn, which is a neutral faction. With the amount of time you're going to be spending in Stratholme and Skull-Immense, the reputation for Argent Dawn will be pretty easy to get exalted and unlock some of these banger items right here. And these will be some very good previous items, specifically this one for Paladins and Retribution Paladins. And the last newly updated faction that I want to touch on is the Thorium Brotherhood. So let's check them out. The last newly added Quartermaster is the Thorium Brotherhood Quartermaster, and he offers items such as this hit ring for spellcasters with int and stamina on it, also good for spell hands and enhancements, and just other caster gear that is pretty decent here that will hold you up. So it's also some mail pieces and stuff like that. But the big piece that he does offer is these plate gauntlets for warriors with 20 strength, 13 stamp, and 1% crit, which is huge for level 58 piece and will probably hold you off for a very long time until you get your tier 1 alt set. One of the factions that isn't newly added but is in the game and does need to be talked about is the Wardens of Time over in the Caverns of Time, which we can hop right over there and check out. The final Quartermaster I'm going to talk about is the Wardens of Time Quartermaster, like I said. And this one is interesting because the reputation will be just like the Chandralar and the Arnon, passively gained through the Caverns of Time dungeon. You will also, in the dungeon, receive items called Corrupted Sands. And you can turn them into the Quartermaster, and for the price of 10 turn-ins, you can get 193 rep. And you can do the math on how long it's going to take to get exalted, but this Quartermaster here will also give some very good pieces for your off specs and your off meta specs, things like that. Like Prot Paladin has some pretty good pieces in here, as well as Shamans and just casters in general. And with that, that covers all of the newly added factions and Quartermasters you can check out. There are two that I didn't mention, and those are the Revan Tusk and the High Elves, which will have just rewards that we can cover up here. I can just throw them up on the screen here. Some of them will be for like leveling process, and some of them will be you can something things you can get at 60. I'm gonna throw up the ones you can get at 60. Their reputation is a little bit harder because you have to do just turn-ins of wool and stuff like that. There's not many quests that you can do anymore for them. The dailies have been removed. And that right there, guys, is option 2 that you can do once you get to 60, or even on your way to 60. Start getting those reputations up so you can get those rewards and get some off pieces and be ready to raid and just not have to spend your entire life in dungeons, but spend your entire life in dungeons while getting the rep. But it also gives you alternative passive. You can't get those pieces, like those tier 0 pieces, those pieces from Ubers and stuff like that. So that is option 2. We're going to move on to option 3, and that is running dungeons. More specifically, the newer dungeons that have been added, because we already know all the level 60 endgame dungeons that are there, but some of you guys don't know the new ones that have been added, and we're going to touch on those. The next thing we're going to touch on, as I mentioned before, is dungeons, which is going to be our third thing that we can do at level 60. There's a lot of new dungeons that have been added that, are there to tailor for those off-meta specs like Balance Druids, all your warlocks, your casters, your enhancement shamans, things like that. There's a lot of pieces in there that are very good that are replace some of the other pre-bis items. I'm not going to touch every piece because it's just a lot to cover, but I am going to talk about the dungeons and what they're called and where they're located, just so you know what to do. I get it. You veterans, you know where they are, you know where everything is. But this video is tailored more towards the newcomers to Turtle Wow and just all the new players on Ambershire as well. So let's jump into that. The first dungeon I want to touch on is Karazhan Crypts, which was added by the Turtle team a while back, but it's definitely something new to check out. And while I will say it is one of the most mechanically challenging dungeons that I've seen for a classic dungeon, it's very much worth the challenge. The dungeon is located in Deadwind Pass, and I'm gonna put up a picture of the entrance here on the screen just so you guys know where it is. The rewards from the dungeon are very much match the difficulty and do provide some pretty good pieces, and I would consider some of these even pre-bis for some classes, including basically a lot of the caster pieces and some of the melee pieces for hunters and druids as well. And while I can't cover every boss in here just because there's so many of them, and I can't also cover every piece of loot that's in here, I will say definitely check it out and give it a shot. The next dungeon I want to touch on is the Caverns of Time dungeon that was added. It's not the Caverns of Time that we know and love from the Burning Crusade, but it is the one that Blizzard originally planned to put in the game. It features you going through the Time Way, fighting the Chromatic Dragonflight, and eventually ending up in the Black Morass from the Burning Crusade. It's a very large dungeon, tons of bosses, and just all around very good pieces for everybody trying to get their previs for raids. The good thing you can do about this dungeon is you will get reputation for one of the factions that we mentioned earlier, which is the Wardens of Time. Here's where you'll also get the sands needed to turn in to get more reputation for those factions, which rewards some pretty banger items. The items I'm going to put up on the screen here are some of the highlights that just jump out at me from this dungeon that are good for basically almost every spec in the game at the moment. The last dungeon I want to touch on is going to be Stormwind Stockades, which is found here in the center of Stormwind in between the Cathedral District and the Trade District. There is a horde entrance that is outside in Elwyn Forest, right here in the middle of this lake over here, in Mirror Lake. The dungeon, for lack of better words, I don't have much footage for it, but it is Stormwind Stockades on crack. Right outside, we have these two quest givers that give us a couple quests here that give us some pretty solid blues. There, again, are some not meta specs that are going to benefit from this. There's some good tank pieces in here. I'll throw that up on the screen here just so you guys can get a general idea, like I did for the other dungeons. But also be aware, this dungeon is not a pushover. The mobs in here hit hard, and it's very tight spaces, and it's very easy to overpull. So keep that in mind when running it. And yeah, that'll cover the 3 new dungeons. The other dungeons I'm not going to touch too much on because you already know which dungeons they are. There's Stratholme, Ubers, and Skullaments, where you can get your tier 0 pieces and some of the other BIS pieces for raiding. So that's another thing we can do here at 60 is we can start getting our gear through dungeons and checking out the new dungeons, experiencing the new dungeons, running the old ones that already exist, getting tier 0. So Uber, Stratholme, Skullaments, the 3 new ones that we mentioned. We got Karazhan Crypts, we got Caverns of Time, and Stormwind Vaults. And those are things to do. And look, I get it. There are things we can do that aren't just gearing and raiding that make the game fun for us. And we're going to touch on that here in the next steps. So, besides gearing, there is a 4th thing you can do at endgame, or even in general, just early on. Or if you like solo play, it's a lot easier at endgame. And that's collectible hunting. Whether that be dungeon mounts, companions, low-level transmogs from some of the quests. Some of them look really cool, I will say. We can show some of that off here on the screen here. There's new mounts that were added to low-level dungeons like Razorfen and Kroll, and I think Wailing Caverns has one. Just a lot of cool things like that. The one thing I do want to say about all these early game mounts is that you do not need riding skill to use them. They will scale off of your level, giving you 0.5 movement speed based on your level. So at level 60, if you don't have riding skill, it'll be a 30% movement speed, and it basically decreases that way. So if you're level 30, for example, you'll have a 15% movement speed increase, which is good. And the first one I want to touch on is the Violet Raptor from Lady Anacondra and Wailing Caverns, which is very easy to get and farm out just because she spawns in one of 4 locations at the entrance of the dungeon, and you can skip most of the mobs by just out leveling them, and they're just level 20 elite, so it's easy to knock out. The next mount, it's another easy one to get. It just takes a little bit more work because of how deep in the dungeon the boss is. And it is the Ivory Boar from Razor Fen Kroll, and it drops off of Aglathos the Raging, obviously the boar boss. And it's not hard per se, it just takes time to do, seeing as how it's a low drop rate and he's so deep in the dungeon. But it does give you something to do in the meantime while you're either waiting for raids or just wanting something to do in the open world that's not raiding in general. Highlighted here on the map is one of the open world quests that has been added that allows you to farm for a mount. It is the Black Venom Hide Raptor, which once you talk to this NPC will start a daily quest chain that will ultimately eventually reward you with a very cool black raptor mount. Probably one of the coolest mounts in the game in my opinion. And the Alliance already know they have the Winter Spring Trainers, which is basically the same thing as the Venom Hide Raptor trainer. He'll eventually, after you finish all the dailies, reward you with the Winter Spring Saber mount, which is just a armorless, kind of bluish white saber mount that's pretty cool looking as well, and is a alternative for the Alliance. Some things to be on the lookout for will be the quest chain in Nomergon that is unlocked by an item that gives you access to a quest chain that eventually will reward you with a Gnomish Pounder mount, which is a pretty interesting mount. It's just a robot that you can ride in, and that's unlocked from Nomergon. Also, there's 2 new mounts added to the game that I'll let people discover. One is from Stormrot Ruins, and the other is from Dragon Maw Retreat. And there's just a lot of open world companions too that you can find, from frogs to turtles to just about anything, really. Just gonna take some discovery from you guys. But yeah, to wrap things up, that's 4 things you can do at level 60 that'll keep you busy for a long time and get you out there in the world and exploring and just discovering all the new things that the Turtle team has put in and all the hard effort they've put to make this world that we all know and love even better. If I missed anything in this video or in this guide that you guys want to see, just let me know and I will do my best to put out a guide or a video on it or anything like that. But this video is already running a bit longer than I expected it to be. So, like I said, let me know in the comments below, guys, if you want to see some other content in the future. If you like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell, do the good old things. We're back to streaming on Twitch, and we've recently started streaming on YouTube. So check those streams out if you guys want to see more content. Until next time, guys, peace out.